Start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Inshallah, we'll continue our session regarding the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh. And the last week we talked about one of the important features of Umar bin Khattab's life as a Khalifa, which was his nightly patrols. We talked about that last week. Today, as time permits, we'll try to cover two topics. One is about Umar bin Khattab's concern, kindness towards the animals, or the compassion towards the animals. And the other is his concern about the knowledge in general. That would include automatically the people who carry the message of Islam, whether they're da'iya or scholars, whosoever. When you talk about his compassion towards the animals, we have to remember some of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this regards, so we can comprehend why Umar was acting the way he acted towards the animals in his time. Because I mean, the Sahaba's actions, when you look into, Sahaba tried their best, and they were the best generation. They tried their best to follow the path of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We understand in general that we are obliged to follow Allah and His Messenger, and when it comes to understanding of a Sahabi, that's not the one that we are obliged to follow, even though a person can follow the understanding of a Sahabi as an ijtihad from him, or otherwise the one that we follow is the consensus of the Sahaba, which is Ijma' Sahaba. Now, when it comes to individual Sahaba or Sahabi, one or a few, you find that they are trying their best to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, the Sahaba are not the one on whom the wahi was revealed. Wahi was revealed on Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we look at their lives, we keep that in mind, that they are actually showing the Quran and Sunnah in a practical manner. So some of the hadith in regards to the compassion towards the animals, I'll inshallah bring it up so we get an idea of why Umar was acting so compassionate towards the animals. One of the famous hadith, which is actually a muttafaqun alayh hadith, and when we say muttafaqun alayh, it means this hadith is reported by both Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari in the Sahihain. And this is one of the highest levels from the perspective of the authenticity. Some is referred as when both the scholars are referring to the same wording, same hadith. The hadith goes like this. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh mentioned, and this is, of course, when we are translating the hadith like this is the meaning of a hadith we are talking about. And when we say even Abu Hurairah, just to be clear for the future also, when we talk about a hadith, for example, somebody says, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh said something, of course, it is not directly from Abu Hurairah. We're not saying that Imam Bukhari heard from Imam Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh. Rather, there's a whole chain, there's a sanad. It is just for the ease, for the talk. We just mentioned the name of the Sahabi who is reporting it from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we just mentioned the name of the book in which the book has been is mentioned in, meaning. So in the case of Imam Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari is reported by Imam Bukhari, and Sahih Muslim is reported by Imam Muslim, and he's the one who gathered, or they are the one who gathered those hadith. So the hadith goes on like this. The meaning of the hadith is that reported by Abu Hurairah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that while a man was walking on a road and he got thirsty, so he was very thirsty, and he came across a well. So he went down the well, he drank some water and came out. When he came out, he saw a dog, and the dog was very thirsty as well. So he felt that the way he was thirsty, the dog is also needs some water. So now, because the dog was panting and licking the mud because of excessive thirst, so the man said to himself that the dog is suffering from the same state of thirst as I did. So he went down to the well again and filled his shoe with water, okay, and held it in his mouth, in the dog's mouth, and watered the dog. Okay, held in his hand and gave it to the dog. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded this person, this man, for that deed, what he did, and he forgave him. As the hadith wordings says, فَشَكَرَ اللَّهُ لَهُ فَغَفَرَ لَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded him or appreciated him when we say shakara Allah. So now this is a reward for serving in any animal being. This is what Rasulullah said, because the Sahaba, they asked, "What Rasulullah, is there a reward for us in serving the animals?" Because Sahaba were surprised about this, because Rasulullah is talking about a dog. So Rasulullah's response was, yes, that there is a reward for serving any animal, any living being, any animate or living being. في كل ذات كبد رطب أجر. That the one has a kabd, which any living being that you take care of, there is an ajr for you. That's what Rasulullah mentioned in the hadith reported by Bukhari. Now, you may have heard a lot of time people have said, "Oh, we have heard this hadith from the perspective of a woman," and that is true, because there's another hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioning about. Actually, the hadith is about anna imratan baghiyan. She's a woman who's a prostitute. That prostitute woman saw a dog moving around a well on a hot day and hanging out its tongue because of thirst. Now she drew water for it in her shoe, and she was pardoned for this act of hers. This hadith is reported by Imam Muslim in his Sahih. Now, these are the actions which are praiseworthy, and you can be rewarded for the actions taking care of the animals, that kind of actions. Not only taking care of them, and if we act badly towards the animals also. There's another hadith reported by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih, and this hadith is reported by Asma binti Abi Bakr radiyallahu anhuma. Said Rasulullah prayed the eclipse prayer, which is Salat al-Kusuf, and then he said, hell was displayed so close that I said, oh my Rabb, am I going to be one of its inhabitants? And he suddenly he saw a woman, and I think he said, who was being scratched by a cat. And he said, what is wrong with her? And he was told he had imprisoned a cat till it died of hunger. So she did not feed the cat, and it was basically tied somewhere, and the cat died because of hunger. Because of that act, the woman was placed into the hellfire. So not only that taking care of the animals is something praiseworthy in Islam, something rewarded, on other way, if people are behaving badly towards the animal, they can be held accountable for the action. Hence, when we look at the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, and we have probably heard the saying of Umar many times, things like Umar mentioned that if there is a donkey which is in Iraq, and if the donkey trips, some other reports talk about the child of a goat trips in Iraq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may hold Umar accountable that why Umar did not pave the path for the animals. See, Umar was very cautious about his accountability in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he was even worried about the animals as well. And that's because of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught to the Ummah. Now, a few of the sayings of Umar in his time regarding the animals, I'll go over inshallah, and then move to the next topic. There was narrated by Al-Musayyib ibn Darim. He said, I saw Umar radiallahu an beating a camel's driver, meaning the one who was riding the camel, he is beating him up. And he said, will you burden your camel with more than it can bear? See, whatever the animal meaning, you cannot put more load on the camel than what it is capable of. So you are hurting an animal. Hence, Umar actually, because usual We have talked about that in the past. That Umar would be walking in the streets with his durra, with his stick, and if he sees any kind of an injustice, he would punish the person who's causing the injustice. So that is considered as injustice towards the animal. Hence, we are accountable because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds us accountable. Hence, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the one who is ruling over the Muslim Ummah, he can apply the punishments on the people who are breaking the laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. Similarly, there's a hadith, there's a report mentioned by Al-Ahnaf bin Qais. He said, we came to Umar bin Khattab with the news of a great conquest. And he asked, where are you staying? I said, in such and such place. He came with me until we reached a place where animals were resting. And he checked them over and asked, will you not fear Allah with regards to these animals or these mounts of yours? Do you not know that they have rights over you? Why did you let them loose? Why didn't you let them loose? So that they could eat of the vegetation of the earth. Because they confined those animals and they did not have a way to go out and get the food for themselves unless those people give them the food. Obviously, they were just confined, and Umar saw that this is not good for the animals. Hence, he asked them, why didn't you do that? And the one part that we should remember, when we are talking about whether animals, and later on when we talk about the knowledge and other things, Umar in general is dealing with which generation? The people around him were either the Sahaba or the Tabi'een, because they met the Sahaba. We're talking about the Muslims, of course, here. So, according to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best generation was the generation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the Sahaba, and then the next generation, and then the next generation. So 3 generations were mentioned here. Different reports talk about differently, but the thing is, these are the best of the generations we are talking about. So Umar is dealing with them, and he is being very careful that none of the people from the best generations fall into the trap of the shaitan and act against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know, the Sahaba, Ridwanullah alayhim, they used to avoid 9 out of 10 mubah things, which is allowed things in Islam, just out of their care that they may fall into wrong things. 9 out of 10 halal things does not mean, that means it is a mubah, meaning they're allowed. It's not obliged to them to do the act only or do those things. So they avoided those things just because they did not want to fall into anything that will go against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so that's about some of the animals. And continuing on, some other stories that were in the time of Umar Khattab, that Umar wanted some fresh fish. So Yarfa, one of the freed slaves of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he took a camel and traveled 2 days. To go and came back buying some fish and bring it to him. When Yarfa went and washed the sweat from his mount, Umar looked at it and said that an animal had to go through that difficult time to fulfill the wishes of Umar. He said, by Allah, he will say, by Allah, Umar will never taste that fish. Because of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he just wanted the fish, and his freed slave took the mount, whatever the ride he was on, whether the horse or the camel or a donkey, 2 days worth of travel, and came back with the fish. And when he saw how the animal was suffered for getting the fish for Umar, by the way, there is nothing haram going on here. It's just the care, how much cautious Umar al-Khattab was. This is what means by the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what means by that you are afraid that you may be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even for the animals. This is how he was. Can you imagine that, how it was, the person who was like that towards the animals, how he would be towards the human beings? And today, we find the opposite of that. In some cases, we find whether it's the Muslim men, women, or non-Muslim men, women, how they are treated. Where we are living, it's very cold weather out today. We know that. Alhamdulillah, we are in a warm place. But we know today, at this moment, while we're sitting here, there will be many people in the streets of Chicago and they will be living there. There is no heater or anything for them. Some of them, we find them, they actually sleep outside those high rises, and they actually crawl towards the walls of those high rises so they might get some heat from those walls. That's the reality we are living in. And this is the place we're talking about. This is today is the most comfortable place in the world you can think of from the perspective of the progress and all we have seen in the world today. Now, moving on to another story about the animals, and inshallah we'll move on to the next subject. That Umar saw a camel which appeared exhausted and sick. He went to it and laid his hand on the camel back and examined it, and saying, I am afraid that I will be questioned about you. So he saw an animal, he's sick, and the animal is sick and tired, and Umar gets worried about himself, that Umar radiallahu anh is going to be questioned about that. And that's the concern that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh had about the animals. And there are many, many stories about the subject. We can just sit today here and talk about that only. But I just want to give a taste of it and move forward, inshallah, with the other things that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh did in his life. So second subject that I'd like to talk about is Umar's concern about the knowledge. And we can see that even taking care of the animals is because of the knowledge and the concern of the knowledge Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh had. That's the thing that pushed him to act like that, because he had the knowledge about the animals from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that pushed him to act the way he acted. And Islam in general put a great emphasis on acquiring knowledge. And when we are saying knowledge of all sorts, yes, but the knowledge which is a must for every one of us is the knowledge of the deen. It's a must for us. It's a fardiyah on all of us that to acquire knowledge, especially to be more specific, the actions that we undertake, each one of us, we have to know the rulings about those actions. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us in those specific actions? Because we are accountable for whatever action we take, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَوَرَبِّكَ لَنَسْأَلَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that by your Rabb, that they will be asked, questioned about whatever they used to do. Whatever, see, if whatever we are doing and we are accountable, that means that there has to be a ruling about that. Otherwise, what are we accountable for? So there has to be ruling from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are things. And Islam puts so much emphasis on the knowledge that even the first verse that was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is connected to the knowledge. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. And then continues on, and علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Yeah. So the very beginning of the first wahi that was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about that. First of all, it's talking about recite, read in the name of the Rabb, the one who created all everything. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that He is the one who gave us the knowledge in the very same first 5 ayat. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear about the people who have knowledge and the one who do not have knowledge. There's a huge difference between them. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, say to them, that are they equal, the people who have knowledge and the one who don't have knowledge? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that there is, of course, that there is signs for the people or a man of understanding who will remember. So it is only for the one who can understand this that they are not equal. Now, today, the system we are living in, which is called so-called democracy, the laws made by man, people go and vote. No matter who you are, you know, you don't know about the subject, everybody's equal. This is not, see, sometimes people think of it, oh, equality is something good. Not necessarily in all the cases. Because the people who have knowledge and the people who do not have knowledge, they're not same. How can you weigh their opinion at the same level? And subhanAllah, when it comes to the ruling over the people, you call it same. but when you have to have a surgery done on yourself, why don't you go and do a rule, go find out from the people what they want, whether you should be cut open or not. Take the majority rule. Why do people go to the doctor or surgeon or specific one in the expert in the field? So how can we say about the life in general, about what should be right and wrong, should be taken from the man? I'm not trying to point out like this, that, oh, okay, so now the one who have more knowledge, they should be deciding what is halal and haram. No, it should come from the one who is all knowledgeable, the one who knows everything inside out. The one who has the knowledge of what is inside of you, or whatever is hidden anywhere in the world, or whatever is apparent out there. He is the one who really has the right to tell us what is right. And that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the one who's telling us that the people who have knowledge and the one who do not have knowledge, they are not same. But unfortunately, when there is a curtain in front of your mind, you cannot see anything. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam even to go and make dua for this, to increase your knowledge. وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Say to your Rabb that increase my knowledge. And Sahaba were very well aware of this idea of knowledge is very important, a cornerstone in living a life according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He wants from us. And for that, we have to have the knowledge from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, talking about that, the Sahaba, and especially Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, we find that he was very cautious about collecting the knowledge as well, and making sure the knowledge is preserved in the right manner and the way it was conveyed to them through Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the very famous stories of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu is that says, and this hadith is reported in Sahih Muslim. So just a reminder for the audience, sometimes we think of it as if whenever somebody says Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, so you will only hear the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not true in all the cases. You do find a hadith which are sayings of the Sahaba only, and sayings of even Tabi'een sometimes. Okay? But in this case, the hadith I'm going to report, it has the both. So some incident has happened in the time of Umar al-Khattab, but it is referring back to one of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What happened was this. The hadith is reported by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. And he says that we were sitting in, he said, كنت جالسا بالمدينة في مجلس الأنصار. We were sitting in a gathering of the Ansar of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Medina. فأتانا موسى أبو موسى الأشعري فزعا أو مذعورا. He came, he is shaking, yellow, turning yellow. He came and he goes, he said, قلنا ما شأنك. They said to Abu Musa, what's wrong with you? What happened? So he said, إن عمر أرسل إلي أن آتيه فأتيت بابه فسلمت ثلاثا فلم يرد علي فرجعت. So Abu Musa, he said, Umar asked me to come to him. I went to him. I tried to ask for permission for 3 times, but he did not reply, so I returned. Then عمر رضي الله عنه فقال ما منعك أن تأتينا فقلت إني أتيتك وسلمت على بابك ثلاثة. So he said, Umar asked me, why didn't you show up? So he said, I came to you, I asked for permission 3 times at your door, and فلم يرد علي فرجعت. So I did not get the reply, so I returned. So he said, because why? He said why? So he mentioned because Rasulullah says that إذا استأذن أحدكم ثلاثا فلم يؤذن له فليرجع. But if somebody goes and tries to ask for permission 3 times, and if he does not get the permission, he should return. This is, and without any kind of bad feelings or something. You just did not get the response, just go return. So Umar radiallahu anhu did not hear this hadith before. So now his response is, أقم عليه al-bayyana wa illa awja'tuka. And he goes like this: you bring the proof that Rasulullah said this, or I'm going to hurt you. This is how he said, I'm going to punish you, I'm going to hurt you. This is Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. See, sometimes we hear these names and we think of, okay, Umar al-Khattab is the one who's saying it, but Abu Musa al-Ash'ari is not some small name among the Sahaba. He's one of those Sahaba who was famous to be a faqih. It's not a small name among the Sahaba. He is one of those person who became Muslim in Mecca. He did the hijrah to Habasha, and from Habasha to Medina before Khaybar. He's one of those Sahaba, like Ja'far bin Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. So he is one of those Sahaba, and he is shaking in front of Umar, and he's been asked, go bring the bayana, bring the proof. What are you talking about? That you think you can just go away from me like this? He said, I'm going to hurt you. So now, look at this. The other Sahabi, Ubay bin Ka'b, another great Sahaba of Rasulullah, he said, لا يقوم معه إلا أصغر القوم. Nobody will go with you except the youngest among us now. He wants to show Umar that just because you don't know doesn't mean we don't know, or people do not have the knowledge from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, قال أبو سعيد قلت أنا أصغر القوم. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri was the youngest among them. قال فاذهب به. So he said, go with him. Now, when he went, another hadith, actually, this is the one for the Muslim, another hadith says, Umar's response for that was, I was busy with trade while Rasulullah said these things, so I did not get this knowledge. So he accepted. It's not that he was after Abu Musa al-Ash'ari or something to just show him that I am more powerful than you or something. It's more of to make sure how to gain knowledge. Make sure what knowledge you're getting is the correct knowledge. Don't just follow somebody's conjectures or somebody's misinformation, and then you feel bad about what you have done. So even Sahaba were very careful, and Umar al-Khattab radiyallahu an made sure that people understand that. Okay, that's one aspect. Now, other aspects, if Umar radiyallahu an was not aware of an issue, then he asked. See, that's one of the key things about any person who is knowledgeable, who understands the deen. If he does not know something, then he will ask the ones who know and acquire the knowledge from the right sources. And Umar was an example for that kind of stuff, even though he was Amir al-Mu'mineen. But still, whenever he was not aware of something, he would go and ask. Like, I always remember the saying of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, about the subject of not knowing. He said, half of the knowledge is to know what you don't know. Half of the knowledge is this, because that automatically, whenever you are aware of what you don't know, then you'll seek that knowledge. But if you are in La La Land, fantasy land, thinking you know everything, which nobody can claim, none of the human beings can claim that he knows everything. If he does, he's one of the biggest jahil, that to think that he knows everything. So Imam Malik is saying half of the knowledge is to know what you don't know, because then you will not act on something that you don't know. You already are aware, I don't know about the subject, I will go and acquire the knowledge about the subject. So Umar al-Khattab was very keen about that. For example, he was not aware of, there was a woman actually came, and who used to practice tattooing, the tattoos that you put. So the hadith which is reported, again, see, this one is, hadith is reported by Imam Bukhari, this one too. So the hadith, قال أتي عمر بامرأته تشم فقام فقال أنشدكم بالله من سمع من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الوشم. So a woman came who used to do the tattooing. So he asked that who knows something about tattooing from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He does not know, hence he made it very clear. Somebody knows, please say something. So Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, ana sami'tu. I have heard something from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Qala, ma sami'ta, what did you hear? So he said, Qala sami'tu, Abu Hurairah said, Qala sami'tu Nabiyya sallallahu alaihi wasallam yaqul, La tashimna wa la tastawshimna. That you don't tattoo somebody and you don't get tattooed from somebody. So it's not only to get tattooed is wrong, not allowed in Islam, but also to tattoo somebody else is not allowed either. So the Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he did not know, he went to people, tell him, anybody who knows, come and tell me what's the ruling in Islam about it, or Rasulullah said something about it, I would like to hear it. Similarly, another one, this is reported by Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah. He said Umar consulted the companions about the case of a woman's abortion. And he said that somebody know about this. So Al-Mughira said Rasulullah gave the verdict that a male or a female slave should be given as a diya. If a woman does the abortion, then she has to give a diya. Okay? So Umar did not just take the information like that. What did he do? He said, bring someone who can testify with you. What you have just said, just bring someone. It's not that he's rejecting. It's not that he's going against a Sahabi. Rather, he said, okay, bring somebody who can be a shahid, who can be a witness for what you were just saying. So Muhammad bin Maslama, radiallahu anh, he testified that he had witnessed Rasulullah giving such a word. And that was sufficient for Umar now. So that's the idea. Not only when he doesn't know, he will approach the people who have the knowledge. And this is another thing we'll talk about at the end, that how Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh was very keen about keeping the right people around him. He did not let them go. And that was one of the greatest things that happened, that he kept most of the Sahaba around him unless there was a need for them to go away. And he kept them mostly around Medina. Some of the statements that came out of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh that encouraged the knowledge. And I'll inshallah go through quickly a few of them, and then we will talk about the issue regarding his khutubs and stuff. Umar said, no man is a scholar until he does not envy those who are above him and does not despise those who are beneath him, and does not take any payment for his work. Okay? And he said, acquire knowledge before you become leaders. And pride prevents you from learning, and you live in ignorance. How many of this we see in today's time around us all the time? Allah bestows some people some sort of a leadership position, and that leadership may not have anything to do with Islam. But suddenly, the shaitan comes on their heads, and now they are not willing to even learn about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now they assume that they would know everything now. And that's a very important lesson for us to understand. Gain knowledge as much as you can before you get into a position where shaitan comes and will prevent you to learn from the people. Even though we find Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu had the highest position from the dunya perspective. He was Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he still was acquiring knowledge from the people. Whenever he did not know, he asked. But he understood this well, that what happens to the human beings, how we act. And we can see it around us many, many times, many positions we see. There could be workplaces, there could be masajid, there could be schools, colleges, universities. People start just trying to act as if they know, but they don't. And that's a big test for us to be in that situation. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, was famous for this kind of a thing, that if he did not know how he would respond. Even though Imam Malik was considered as the most knowledgeable person in his time, a guy came from very far away, and he asked his people sent him to go ask questions to Imam Malik. He asked 40 questions. 40 questions. Guess how many he answered Imam Malik? The most knowledgeable person that was known at that time to the people was Imam Malik. He answered four questions. And the guy is surprised. Okay, you're giving me 4 answers. He said, what am I supposed to go and tell my people? I came all the way to get the answers from you, the most knowledgeable person people think of, and he is giving me 4 answers. What am I supposed to do with 36? He said, go tell them Imam Malik doesn't know. That's his response. Just tell him Imam Malik doesn't know. Simple as that. And that takes a big person some time to be in these kind of shoes and to act like that. And then Umar al-Khattab says that even if knowledge does not benefit you, it will never harm you. So gain knowledge. It may not be of your use at that time, but it will not hurt you. So gain knowledge as much as you can. And he said, the death of 1,000 worshippers is easier to bear than the death of a scholar who has knowledge of what Allah has permitted and Allah has forbidden. SubhanAllah. Similarly, Umar warned against the mistakes of the scholars and said, Islam will be destroyed by the mistakes of scholars and arguments of the hypocrites who misinterpret the Quran to support their views, and misleading rulers as well. Okay. And the last one, he said, seek knowledge and teach it to people, learn dignity and tranquility, and be humble towards those from whom you learn knowledge, and be humble towards whom you teach it. And don't be the one who is tough. Don't be a tough scholar. Otherwise, your knowledge cannot be established because of your toughness. The word used is a jabbar. Unfortunately, sometimes the jabbar or the jabbar ulama, sometimes people try to translate it as tyrannical, but this is not tyranny here, because it's more of a toughness, harshness, the way you are presenting to the people will actually not take it, even though you're saying the right thing, they will not take it because of your attitude. So be firm, but in a nicer manner.
Tyranny.
Yeah, tyranny, sorry. No, tyranny. So apologize my pronunciation. Okay, now I will talk about a few things about the khutbahs that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. It's a few of the things that he mentioned. But I'd like to mention, before I go into that, to understand that when Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's khutbahs are looked into, those khutbahs have to be looked into from the circumstances Umar al-Khattab was in. Meaning, Islam was established over the people, and there's the Islamic rule was there, the system of Islam was there, and Umar is trying to make sure that Islam is protected and preserved while he's implementing the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, for example, if he is talking about some individual things in details, for example, he says that remember that some stinginess is a branch of hypocrisy. Now, talking about stinginess, okay, being bakhil. Now, this is a very personal thing, individual things, but he wants to make sure the ummah is aware of these kind of things in the khutbah. Now, that's in those circumstances when the people like Umar al-Khattab is ruling over the people with Islam. Now, today, Islam is not implemented. Then we can talk about just individual issues and do not bring the people back to the implementation of Islam. Is not the right way to do it. You have to talk about the things which are relevant for the ummah at that time, whichever situation you are in. So today, we cannot just talk about, even though these are also issues for the ummah, they can be discussed here and there, but that should not be the main focus to talk about just these things, which are just for the morals, for example. That yes, akhlaq is something part of Islam that should be discussed, but that could not be just to say Islam is just akhlaq. Because even the hadith that talks about Rasulullah was sent for the makarim of akhlaq, that does not mean that Islam is only about akhlaq. Nobody can say that Islam is only akhlaq. Because you cannot say salah is akhlaq then. You cannot say my all financial transactions are akhlaq, but you're going for, in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going for jihad is akhlaq. No, these are different actions. And different actions need different hukum shari. So you have to be careful about when we say that. So when we're talking about Umar al-Khattab's ideas, when he's presenting the khutbah, like for example, he said, judge people as they appear to be and do not be concerned with their inward nature. Okay, this is one of the key problems that we have sometimes. People say, oh yeah, that guy is doing something bad, but you know his intentions are good, or his heart is pure. He's a very good person from inside. So brothers, let's not question his actions. No, as a Muslim, we understand we only question what we see. We cannot question people's hearts. We cannot approve of a haram action by saying that the intentions of the actions were good. Because it's not intention when إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, the hadith of Rasulullah mentioned like this, which is also reported by Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, is when it says that the actions are dependent on the intentions, it is talking about that actions are already the one according to Islam. Now their dependency is on the niyyah, which is the intention. So the both action and intentions have to be correct. Okay. Now, similarly, Umar al-Khattab was, even though he was one of those people who was famous a well-known thing about him, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the glad tidings about him to be one of the people who will be people of Jannah. Even then, Umar was very concerned about his actions, and he said, I hope that I could be saved by a small margin. If I can just enter into Jannah, escape from the hellfire, that's enough. And he is the person who was given the glad tidings by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his lifetime. This is how he used to look at his life. When it comes to other sayings of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he mentioned one of the things, I'll just mention a couple. He said that whoever wants to conceal his secrets will have the choice, meaning a man will remain in control of his affairs so long as conceals his secrets. If it discloses his secret to one or more people, then realizes that it would have been better not to disclose it. So if you want to keep a secret, don't tell anyone. Don't go around thinking that I'm going to tell 1, 2, 3 people and will stay as a secret. So be smart about what you want to be as a secret and what you don't want to be disclosed. And when we think about the Muslim brothers, our brothers, Umar al-Khattab said, do not think badly of a word spoken by your brother when you can still find good ways to interpret it. If you hear something from a Muslim brother, find excuses to think good of him. But if you don't find anything, then that's a different story. If it's a blatant wrong things have been said or done, and you are well aware of it, that's a separate issue. But in general, the rule is try to find the goodness in your brother. Now, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, having said all these things about the knowledge and how to preserve the knowledge and deal with the people who have the knowledge, Umar made sure that the knowledge is preserved as well. And for that, he made sure that Medina became the center of the fatawas and the fiqh. And for that, he kept all the Sahaba in general. The general rule were kept in Medina. There were people in Makkah as well, and there were people in other places, but in general, Medina was the place. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh wanted to keep everybody in there. And that can be seen by one of the hadith, and inshallah we'll wrap it up today's talk. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh mentions, I used to teach Quran to some people of the Muhajirin. And this is a very long hadith actually reported by Imam Bukhari, but the part of it I am discussing which is relevant to today's talk. Ibn Abbas said, so he used to teach, and then among whom there was Abdurrahman bin Auf. And while I was in his house of Mina, he said, and he was with Umar bin Khattab during Umar's last Hajj, Abdurrahman came to me and said, would that you had seen the man who came today to the chief of the believers, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar, saying, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, what do you think about so-and-so who says if Umar should die, I will give the pledge of allegiance to such and such person. And he said, by Allah, the pledge of allegiance of Abu Bakr was nothing but a prompt sudden action which got established afterwards. Okay, so Umar became angry and then said that Allah willing, I will stand before the people tonight and warn them against those people who want to deprive the others of their rights, talking about the question of the rulership. And Abdurrahman bin Auf said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, do not do that. For the season of Hajj gathers all sorts of people who have knowledge, people who do not have knowledge, and you talk about something which is about the fitna basically, and you bring this up, then it will be they who will gather around you when you stand to address the people, meaning these kind of people, and I am afraid that you will get up and say something, and some people will spread your statement and may not say what you actually have said. Okay, this is a sensitive material issue, the topic it was. So he said, do not talk about that. And they may not understand its meaning and may interpret it incorrectly. So you would wait till you reach Medina, as it is the place of immigration and the place of Prophet's traditions. And there you can come in touch with the learned and noble people and tell them your ideas with confidence. And the learned people will understand your statement and put it in its proper place. So Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh understood what Abdurrahman bin Auf was trying to say. And he said, I will inshallah do this speech when I went to Medina. The point here is this, because it's a little bit longer story, is this: Umar bin Khattab was aware of this, that the knowledgeable people were in Medina at that time, because he's the one who took the measures to keep them. And when Abdurrahman bin Auf reminded him, don't talk about things that people cannot understand here properly, or they may create confusion if you talk to them about this issue of, like, for example, trying to spread through that Abu Bakr just become out of sudden the Khalifa among the people, and he would give the Pledge of Allegiance to somebody else after Umar dies. So Umar did not want to discuss this subject there. Rather, he wanted to go into Medina, because Abdurrahman bin Auf reminded him, because there will be people who understand the subject that you are trying to say. Instead of creating an issue, which is not an issue among the people there. If it became an issue, yes, he would have addressed. But it was not an issue among them. There's one person or some people were discussing this, and they could have been taken care of in Medina. Hence, he said, and he did deliver the whole, the hadith, is much longer hadith reported in Sahih Bukhari that discusses this whole subject. If there's a need, we can talk about it later sometime, inshallah. So we'll close today's topic here, inshallah. If there is any questions or comments about the subject cover, inshallah, I'll try to